The topic is what is DNS resolution and what is authoritative DNS server, what are ports, what is a TCP handshake, how do these work together. So first let's understand what is DNS resolution. A DNS is domain name service. Computers communicate using IP addresses such as 192.0.2.1, but humans use domain names example.com. DNS is a system that bridges this gap. So, IP address is what the computers or devices understand. For us, we use the domain name that is like google.com, but computers only understand the IP addresses to fetch the domain you're looking for. So the process is when you enter a URL, your computer queries a DNS resolver. A DNS resolver finds the authoritative source through a step-by-step hierarchical lookup. It starts with a root server for hints, which directs it to a TLD, or that is top level domain server, that is like .com or .org for the correct zone, and that server that then points to the domain specific authoritative name server, which holds the definitive IP address, returning it up the chain to the user's browser. DNS resolver does these steps. First step is when the user sends the request, that is user request. You type www.example.com or google.com, any website, into your browser. Your computer, your device or DNS client first checks its own cache, and if it is not found in the cache, then it goes to the recursive resolver or DNS resolver. And the next step would be query root servers. Then the resolver or DNS resolver or ISPs ask root name server, example that is for .com or .org, for help. Then it is from the root to the TLD. The root server doesn't know the IP but knows who manages .com. It sends back a referral to the .com TLD server. That means that root server in itself doesn't have the information to fetch the data. Then that root server queries that to the TLD server. Then the TLD servers knows the authoritative name servers for the example.com. Example, it is Google's name servers and refers the resolver to them. So the step that is TLD to authoritative means that the root TLD server doesn't have exact information. Authoritative server is the actual place where your domain name service is located. So these steps from the root to TLD server, that all works to get or refer your query to the authoritative server. So after getting that information or query from those TLD root servers to the authoritative, that authoritative server provides the actual domain name service it has. Example, there is Google's name servers that has all the database. So let's understand that deeply. An authoritative DNS server holds the definitive official records like IP addresses, mail servers for specific domain, acting as the ultimate source of truth for that domain's information, providing final answers to DNS queries for recursive resolvers. Unlike recursive servers that cache answers, authoritative servers contain the original zone files, ensuring accuracy and reliability for translating domain names, example google.com, into machine readable IP addresses, example 142.250.189.110. So this authoritative DNS server actually has exact official records for every information like IP addresses, mail servers for our specific domains. it acts like an ultimate source of truth. If all the information like root server or TLD doesn't have accuracy, so it asks the final truth to the authoritative DNS server for exact information. It refers the query. It is like when we have some certain issues for our products that we order, we does a customer service call, and if the customer service doesn't have the issue that is in his power to solve, they forward that to the higher authority for solving. So it is similar to that. TLD, root, all cache doesn't have exact much more power or exact information, or it is not ultimate truth for DNS resolution. So it has to get towards authoritative DNS server, that for example it is Google's name servers, so they can provide the exact information, that is IP addresses, mail servers for a specific domain. Authoritative DNS servers uh, contain original zone files, original details that provides accuracy, reliability for providing exact details that redirects from example that is google.com into a machine readable IP addresses, that is 142.250.189.110. So let's now understand what are the key functions and characteristics of authoritative DNS server. Source of truth stores the actual current DNS records a, mx, cname, etc. for a domain. Official records provides the final correct answer for a domain's IP addresses when asked by a recursive DNS server. Domain specific manages records for specific zones, often delegated from tldservers.com/org. Primary and secondary can have master primary and slave secondary servers for redundancy, both authoritative for the zone. Managed by you. You typically configure these servers through your domain registrar or a DNS hosting provider. So, source of truth, official records, domain specific, primary and secondary is what I have explained. What does managed by you mean? Managed by you means you actually, when you make a website, you have to configure these details like domain name service, which is actually like some examples are like GoDaddy and Google name servers. These are actually the source where DNS IP addresses for your websites are provided. So in that websites, when you create it, you have to provide like what domain name you want to choose and what would be its IP address. So it is a record on that site. We does all this process from TLD root to actually get information through for that site accurately. How it fits in the DNS process. Users type a domain name, that is example.com. A recursive resolver like your ISPs, internet service providers, server receives the request. If not cached, the resolver asks high-level servers root TLD for directions. Eventually, the request reaches the authoritative DNS server for example.com site. The authoritative server provides the IP address. The resolver catches it for a set time and sends the IP to the user's browser. The result would be the DNS server returns the IP address associated with that name. Context. Without DNS, you would have to memorize a string of numbers for every website you visit. So what does context mean? If there was not a concept of DNS, you would have to, instead of doing google.com, you would have to put actual IP address to get into that site. You would be doing something like 192.128.8.2 and enter. Then you have to go to that site and you would have to remember this to enter other sites as well. For example, if some other sites have some other IP address, you would have to put that to get into the site. The DNS solves that issue by letting you know that you only put what you remember, like google.com, and it does all this backend which I explained to get you to the site. Now that we understood DNS and what is authoritative server, now let's understand what is ports. A single server with one IP address can run many different services at once, like a website, a database, and an email server. Ports are numerical identifiers that ensures data reaches the correct application on that server. And to let the user land on exact, we instead of putting 192.6.8, we actually add /443. For example, the range of ports are numbered from 0 to 65535. So the ports can be from 0 to 65535. Common standards are port 443 for secure web traffic HTTPS, port 80 for standard web traffic HTTP, port 22 that is for secure remote access SSH. The logic behind the ports: if the IP address is the street address of a building, the port is the room number that tells you exactly which office or which room to enter. Now let's understand what is a TCP handshake. Once your computer knows the IP and the port, it doesn't just send data immediately. It uses TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, to perform a three-way handshake. This ensures both the sender and receiver are ready and can track the data packets accurately. Only knowing IP and port doesn't mean you would directly land to the page. There must be a secure connection between the receiver and the sender, which is known as TCP handshake or three-way handshake. The handshake consists of three specific signals, that is SYN synchronize. The client sends a request to start a session. Second is SYN ACK, synchronize acknowledge. The server replies confirming it received the request and is ready. Third is acknowledge, ACK. The client sends a final confirmation that the connection is now active. TCP handshake means that to send the data accurately and to not have a data loss or packet loss, there must be a secure connection between the sender and the receiver. So it ensures that there is a secure connection to send the data. It means that it asks the client request to start a session, and when both the parties or the server replies and confirms that they are ready to receive and the request, so the client sends a final confirmation that the connection is active to send the request. So what does this full sequence or all these three steps complement each other? So this means that first you type example.com and DNS tells the computer that the IP is 93.184.2.216.434. It is an IP address. Then port, your browser targets port 443 at that IP to request a secure web page. That means that 93.184.216.34 is not exactly your website or your landing page. Your landing page is exactly at port 443. It would be something like 93.184.216.34/443 to enter the your web page. So the third step would be like it doesn't directly do that. It must have a secure connection between the sender and the receiver, and there must be synchronization acknowledgement to perform a TCP handshake. Then that process is complete. So your computer and server performs synchronize acknowledgement, an acknowledgement sequence to shake hands. Then the step 4 would be data flow. The connection is now open and the website content begins to load. So that was the video for today. I hope it was insightful and I made the topic easy for you. Make sure to like, share, comment your thoughts and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.